Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host.
The topic of your book is one of the main reasons, of course. I mean, I've been planning to have you on for a while, but after I saw that you had published your book, it gave me a jolt to give you a call and ask you to come back on. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the title, which I think is really important. A lot of people aren't really much aware of, well, you know, maybe people are aware, but we're not aware of how deep this corruption goes when it comes to our health, whether it be through the food, whether it be through the pharmaceutical companies, nutrition. We have the Codex Alimentarius, which has now been in effect now for 2 years now, I believe. And we just keep seeing less and less nutritional value with so many things that are out there. So what was it that inspired you to, pick the title of the book being The Underlying Cause of the Unconscious Conspiracy Against Our Health? And what inspired you to pick the title and to take the time to write this book?
Well, that's an interesting story. I actually was invited to give a talk at a friend's place. She put together a whole week-long seminar, and every day was a different group of people. And she actually listened, and I didn't have any title for my seminars really, and I was in the process of gathering the data for the book. So I had the book almost put together, or a great part of it, before I even had a title. And she says, "This has got to be a title. You've got to." And so I'm like, "Oh wow, she was amazing." Just coming up with it. It's a little long, I know, but it's so descriptive of what we have going on today all around us. Mm-hmm. The unconsciousness that's taking place is amazing. People are just not aware of the fraud, and to me, it's really it's not a conspiracy anymore. I mean, this is a fact-based suspicion from now on. I mean, there is, when you see the patents, when you do your research and look and read the patents on this technology with the genetic modification, with the pesticides, where they actually are labeling the corn plant itself as a pesticide. It's not even a plant. It's the patent says it is a pesticide all by itself, the corn plant. Oh, and yet we have Doritos being made from this. We have ethanol. We have all these different products from corn that it's actually a pesticide. And when you really get that concept, that's huge fraud in my book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know that they had come to the point of labeling corn as a pesticide. I knew that it had the BT corn has the Roundup in it, right?
Well, it's actually a neonicotinoid, I believe, is the correct pronunciation. I always mess that up, but It's a synthetic nicotine that they've actually bred into the corn plant, so the plant itself makes the pesticide itself. So when a bug eats the corn, it will kill the bug. And we're eating corn, or I don't really anymore, but people are eating corn and products made from corn on all different levels. I mean, corn has weaved its way into the food chain in all the different ways. Even the beekeepers, large commercial beekeepers onto the smaller commercial beekeepers, use high fructose corn syrup as feed for their bees, and this is coming from these GMO sources. So the bees are eating it. So then the honey is going to have it.
Oh, no.
The pollen is going to have it. So you see, this is the fraud I'm talking that's huge. It has permeated our entire existence here in all the NATO countries.
Yeah. And I would think it's going to get even worse now if and when they shove this TPP thing through.
Well, worse. I see it could get worse. Let's see, Obamacare. I have had to quit buying some things from some of the suppliers because with this Obamacare thing and the mandates that are coming down through from the federal government to the states are actually overriding the states now, and the states are allowing it. So it's actually this whole, I mean, this is political,
right.
This is dietary, this is medical, this is military. It is on all the levels, even in the educational system. And this is the unconscious part. People don't know this because, well, it's hidden. I consider it hidden. It's not being openly talked about.
Or it's just being implemented in such a slick manner. You know, like you said, it's being mandated from a federal level that, you know, when you, let's say a school or something, they're like, oh, well, this is the new federal guideline, but they don't tell you the repercussions of changing into this new way of thinking.
Well, right, and see, this is if people have lost, for the most part, the ability to even know how this country is structured. You know, you have your counties are actually the highest law in the land, if you will, the way it was structured.
Right.
Then the states, then the federal government, and now it's completely backwards. We have the federal government now basically hijacking and mandating, kind of forcing the states, because if they don't take this mandate, they don't agree with it, they'll lose their federal money. So we have, you know, this is where the money in the banking comes into it, the finance end of it. So, and all it would take, to me, it would be really simple. I used to lobby and then got laws passed in the years past. I understand how government works, and it really comes down to the people allowing this to take place. Please complaining.
Yeah, it's
and so we're doing it to the lack of education, the lack of the desire to even do anything about it. And you talk about politics to people, and they're talking Democratic Republican. Well, who cares? They all work for the same people.
Yeah.
And when you lobby, I've been on the floor, in lobbying at the State House, pulling senators and congressmen out to tell them that this is what I want you to do. I am one of your constituents. You need to vote this way. And I've lobbied right beside people that are being paid six figures to lobby for pharmaceutical and nutraceutical companies.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get down to that level, there is so much corruption. And you have so much power. I was involved with 20 other naturopaths in the state of Minnesota a few years ago. We got laws changed, 20 of us, changed the laws in that state. And we were lobbying side by side with these other people that were being paid from the nutraceutical company and the pharmaceutical companies. And we got the laws changed in our favor to favor natural medicine instead of nutraceutical, pharmaceutical stuff. That's how much power you have. If people would just embrace your power.
Absolutely. And I think one of the major situations that we have to deal with, or one of the obstacles we have to deal with, is the fact that people feel they don't have the power. And they've either thrown their hands up, become apathetic, or don't even know what power is available to them. What can they do? A great example of what you're talking about, and I just wanted to touch on this for just a moment because the TPP is on my mind. And for those of you that don't know, that's a Trans-Pacific Partnership. And speaking of nutrition and health, people don't realize that that is also in this free trade agreement. And the people of India are now protesting. Many of them, a lot of the organizations are fighting this because of the fact that it will mean a lot of the cheaper medicines that they were creating themselves now have to pass the standard of the TPP, which is going to drive up the cost. So all these poor people are not going to be able to have the medicines that they were creating within their own country. You know, it's just so you know we talk about the federal government. Now we have to be aware of, like you said, the NATOs, the NAFTAs, the TPPs, the UN, you know, all of these. I try to avoid the New World Order because it's multiple parties. It's not one party. It's multiple corporations and multiple, cabals that are just trying to take over power here. And that is going to affect a lot of people throughout the planet, especially when it comes to their health.
Well, I have to agree with a good friend of mine, Patrick Jordan. He says that we are under planetary military occupation on all levels.
All levels. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's all being well, geez, I guess the inspiration is greed and power. Greed, power, and control, perhaps. But anyway,
right.
Go on.
No, I would just add, into the power thing is the enslavement of others rather than the compassion and the unity thing. It's definitely not about that on that corporate level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening that perhaps people aren't aware of. I know you have your regular listeners. I have my regular listeners, but let's say we've got people tuning in today that have never heard of you or me or any of this stuff. Can you give us a few examples of what's happening? You talked a little bit about the corn, but what about the pharmaceutical companies? What about the nutritional value of foods and vitamins and supplements? What has been going on these last several years or even decades for what we know?
Well, the food that we have, or what we call food, most people call food, I wouldn't even call it food. For instance, like pretty much all of your grains, your wheat, your barley, your flax, your oats, all the grains, if you look at them on a genetic level, they're not even anything close. Structural, they may look like a plant, a wheat plant or an oat plant, but on a genetic structure, they're so mineral deficient. They've been bred to have certain enhancements, certain qualities to them over the last 100 years, that it's not the same. Our bodies have evolved a certain way over the thousands of years and the millennia that we've been here as a human. And to be presented with this onslaught of, I like to call it food-like substances, that this is the root of the diseases. This is the root of the inability for people to be passionate about where they live, their government, and even take care of themselves. And on my show, we've been on Wednesdays here on this network, we've been talking about a book called The Biology of Aggression that was published in 1981.
Wow.
And this book was researched all the way back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. They reference all that far back, and they've been implementing in all the NATO countries this aggression caused through the food, through the medicine, through even the natural health industry right now. I see this so much, and we talk about this on our show on Wednesdays, about the fraud just in the natural health industry.
Yeah.
It's huge. And everyone pretty much knows. You mentioned pharmaceuticals. Oh, yeah, they're a little toxic. Okay. Well, it's much more than just a little toxic. There's nothing healthy about them. And if you really get to the industry and how it's made, I've been in pharmaceutical plants. I have clients that work or have worked in pharmaceutical plants, and their bodies are just ravished. That work there, they are so sick.
Really?
It is incredible. I work with nurses. I don't really work with any doctors. There's something when you get to that status of medical doctor, I really believe you can become retarded because you can't see past your investment of your education. You're unwilling, unmoved to look at the other. I'm talking in general now. This isn't pointed at anybody in particular.
Right.
But we work with a lot of nurses. They have the humanity and the compassion. They're in the trenches dealing with the people day in and day out in the rooms and on their rounds. And they're getting this. This is why we see nurses refusing the pharmaceutical injections, the vaccines. They'd rather wear that mask on their shift rather than poison their body.
Right. And that has a lot to do with the female component of compassion, just like you were talking about. They've held on to their compassion.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about the natural, the natural foods and the natural, supplements and whatnot. I had a guest on here a little while ago, Jeff Harvey, and we were talking about just, regular vitamins, your one-a-day vitamin. I don't know who the company is, but he was like, I wouldn't put that in my body for anything. It's all petroleum. Can you tell us a little bit about, the vitamin and the supplement industry and what's going on there?
Oh, absolutely. I've formulated most of my own products because I couldn't find what I wanted.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, misleading junk science. For instance, the vitamins. Let's just look at B vitamins.
Right.
Or how about vitamin C? Vitamin C is a really good one. Most of the vitamin C that you get today actually comes from genetically modified corn, believe it or not.
Really?
It comes from corn. It doesn't even come from citrus, which you would think it would come from an orange. But they've genetically altered the corn to have high citric acid or aspartic acid contents.
Right.
Okay, so that's vitamin C. They also get it from several other different plant sources that they've bred. They may not have genetically modified it, as in messed with the genes in a laboratory. They've selectively been breeding it. That's also genetic manipulation, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. That they've bred certain characteristics into certain plants, like tapioca. I can't think of very many off the top of my head right now, but corn is like the number one source of vitamin C. I actually have found the organic sourced vitamin C, non-GMO, which is a lot more money, and I actually can source it out of China right now. I can't even find genetically modified, free, non-GMO, organic citric acid in this country that's even reasonably priced.
Oh, that's really bad.
Can't find it. That's the sad situation of affairs that we're dealing with.
That's really bad. I'm sitting here, you're saying vitamin C, and I'm sitting here holding on to a packet. A couple of weeks ago, I thought I was coming down with a cold or something, and someone gave me that Hall's Defense. Now I'm sitting here reading the back of the packet, because granted, I've only had one, thank God. But I'm reading the ingredients. One, I didn't realize it was owned by Kraft Foods, one of the worst GMO people or companies. The ingredients for Hall's Defense Vitamin C drops is sugar, which I'm assuming is probably beet sugar, glucose syrup, sodium ascorbate, citric acid, ascorbic acid, and it contains soy. What the heck does that have to do with vitamin C and citrus?
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's that unconscious. They're slipping all this stuff in. And people don't read labels really on a general state. Most people don't. I'm a fanatic. I will stand in the store. We actually were looking for a tomato sauce here, not just before the holidays. We wanted tomato sauce.
Right.
We spent a half an hour looking for tomato sauce that did not have chemicals in it.
Did you find one?
We found one. It was twice the dollars as all the other ones.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, to me it was worth it because it tasted almost like my grandmother's and my mother's. Wow. It was that good.
Was that at a regular supermarket, or did you have to go to like Whole Foods or something?
No, we have here on the eastern coast. There's a chain, I think it's called Wegmans, that has a natural section.
Okay, I know who they are, yeah.
You got to look a little bit, but there's some stuff in there that is actually pretty good.
So
you just got to look, do your homework. Yeah, absolutely, we lucked out.
And it's funny because I'm sitting here, I'm almost kicking myself. Because when it comes to my food, when I grocery shop, I do read every single label. But for some reason, and again, here we go with that subconscious or unconscious thing. I saw this package someone gave me. It said vitamin C on it. I didn't think twice about reading the label. But, of course, I would read the label for anything else I bought, but I didn't think about it when it came to vitamin C, because you would think,
Right.
subconsciously vitamin C is Vitamin Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are here speaking with Wil Spencer about the conspiracy against our health. Just before the break, we were talking about, well, just so many things as far as everything from corn to vitamin C. And it's just amazing what a crazy, I guess it's a maze of information to really get to the truth of what is nutritional and what is good for us, what isn't genetically modified. And it just gets all the more disconcerting, even when we move into the health food aisle. And Wil, I wanted to ask you this question because I feel it's very important for, let's say the vegetarian aspect of our society. So many of my friends, I'm sure your friends, if not yourself, are vegetarians, and they're always looking for non-meat substitutes for the typical stuff, a non-meat hamburger, a non-meat chicken salad, something like that, and it all has soy in it. And I'm wondering if you could tell us the true story of soy, what it does to the body, the genetically modified aspect of it. It is my understanding 80% of the soy in the United States has been genetically modified. What are your thoughts on soy, and what can we do about it?
Well, I would say it's higher than 80%.
Oh wow!
I was raised back. My mother was a little ill, and I couldn't. She wasn't able to nurse me when I was a baby. So I was one of the first round of Similac babies. And when I was young, I had actually developed almost like breasts in school, and I used to get beat up a lot. And I was overweight and had all kinds of hormonal problems that way. Soy isn't a food. In the early 60s, 1960s, the soy industry basically lobbied and paid several $1 million to the FDA to allow soy to even be classified as a food. Up until then, it wasn't even food.
Really?
My father, who was a farmer, never ate soy. You never fed it to animals, especially the swine or the cattle, because it caused them to go infertile. It caused digestive disorders and ultimately death. And it's just not a food, period, not at all. And it's horrible that this is happening, and now we have all these different grain industries doing the same thing. That's part of this unconscious conspiracy thing that's so prevalent.
All right, now
soy is only one thing.
I have a question for you about soy then. Historically, I mean, unless we've been lied to 100%, historically speaking, I would think that, there were Asian cultures that, they really got off on soy. They made tofu, they made soy sauce, all of this thing. Is it because it was a protein and it had no nutrition? Was it just like a filler? Do you know anything about that? Why was it so popular in the East?
Well, they used it in different manners in their society. I don't know all the details at all. I mean, there's certain aspects that I'm still have my questions. Is this accurate or not? Because when we're told something and so that's a certain way, and I've met people from, for instance, Okinawa, Japan, mainland China, they don't eat like we're being told they eat. I mean, I've talked to authentic, older people in those societies. And they come to this country, they become ill, and they're eating the same foods.
Right.
They go back to their country, and they become well again. So there's something drastically wrong with the picture of what we're being told. So yeah, they did do these things. They made other food-like elements out of the soy, but it was not the same soy.
Yeah.
As in the plant, and you have a society that operates in a certain fashion, and when you take the people out of the society and move them to a different society, you lose that environmental impact just from the society. So just on that level alone, we don't have that kind of society here,
Right.
first of all. Second of all is my father never ate soy. He used it as a soil enrichment. You planted soybeans because of its nitrogen gathering capacity of the plant. But you never ate it. You plowed it under. You got it to a certain level of maturity, and you plowed it into the ground. You never ate it. You only saved the seeds so then you can grow a crop again. So they called it green manuring. At least that's what my father called it.
Right. And, I guess that would have a lot to do with it. Take out the GMO factor, but look at the soil factor. Perhaps in the East, again, we're talking hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, the soil probably had a very different property and maybe gave the soil a certain nutritional value that we didn't have. And just let me jump in and say also the fact that they use it kind of like a condiment. Tofu wasn't really a meal. It was an additive, maybe a filler. Soy sauce is a condiment. It's no different than eating, here in the South, biscuits and gravy. It's just, you're poor, you got to fill up your stomach, and that was basically it,
Well, that's true. My dad, he was grown up through the Depression, and that was exactly the mentality, is you didn't have good food, but you had this filler to at least kind of trick your belly into thinking that it had something in it. But see, now that dietary choices back then that was there out of pure necessity, was, to keep you alive, now we have 80-plus years later, we have even more mineral deficiency in the soil. We have even more deficiency in the plant. We have genetic modification on top of it. And now we have degeneration generation after generation after generation. And so you can't sustain today on what they used to sustain back then because it was never meant to sustain. It was only an emergency type situation.
Exactly. And it's just like, well, actually, I wanted to ask you about soil because you do talk a little bit about soil in your book, and you mentioned a little bit about it now. What has happened to our soil over the years, and why has it become so necessary for chemicals and whatnot to be added into it for us to be able to even cultivate a decent crop nowadays?
Well, it's so out of balance and deficient. Nature has built into itself a recycling mechanism that have been deemed pests, like bugs, grasshoppers, funguses, bacteria. You have these outbreaks. And so the standard way of conventional agriculture is you have to combat them by basically waging a war on them by using pesticides. Well, if people really got the concept of years of old, a pest was there because there was an imbalance in the soil. And the pests are there basically to recycle or to break down something that's unhealthy. 1936, on the Senate floor, there was an article that was written in the Cosmopolitan. Now it's referred to as Senate Document 264, which you can Google it. It's all over the Internet. It stated back then in this article that the soils were deficient then.
Wow.
Okay. Science of today, this is 2008 now, Fritz Popp out of Germany made a statement that said we need a minimum of 60 different minerals in our diet every day to be just adequately healthy. Well, in 2007, there was a few of us that pooled our money and got some testing done. And we tested Walmart food. We tested, it was wild oats back then, kind of before Whole Foods became really popular in organic stores. And we found out that conventional food had less than 15 different minerals in it. And the really good organic food had less than 20. And if they're saying we need 60 different minerals and the really good organic stuff that you buy in the store only has 20, then there's a factor in there. That means you're going to eat, but you're not going to actually increase your overall health long term.
Right.
This is why we see so many birthing problems with with babies, because mom is not able to even make a healthy baby, because mom's going to put every effort into making a healthy baby, and she can't. So we have a problem, and unless you're doing some supplementation of some kind to fortify your core health, you are definitely not going to eat and increase your health. It's just not possible today.
Right. That's a very profound statement what you just said. It's not possible today. And it just goes to show everyone, all of our listeners, myself included, how far this really has gone, where we're at right now, and how difficult it is to just, you use the term vital health, to live in vital health, and how I don't know how confusing it is. I have a weekly meeting that I do here, and one of the attendants, one of the people that showed up, was talking about cooking healthy, and or living raw. I'm sorry, and I know you talk about living raw and whatnot as well. But I was like, well, how do you do that? The average person does not understand how to cook raw, or to do recipes that are raw, or to shop in a way that is healthier for us. So for me, I would think it starts off at the supermarket. What are we buying? And I'm wondering if there is anything that you could, give us some solution to in all of this, of how can we just shop a little healthier?
Well, don't go down the aisles, first of all. Stay on the outside perimeter of the store, and that will be just a definite increase just right there. Because it's the perishable stuff. I mean, just the concepts of digestion alone have been twisted and turned around to not mean what they used to mean. I mean, digestion, and I refer to a book called Electrical Nutrition, written by an older friend of mine, Denny Highstand. He has a theory in there he calls the rock, R-O-C-K, to rot, R-O-T theory.
Okay.
And his theory is that you put what you normally eat on your kitchen cupboard, and then you leave it set there for 7 days. And if it doesn't begin to rot or break down or decompose in 7 days, then you should never put it into your mouth.
Wow.
Because if the bacteria in the air and the funguses in the air don't consider it food, then the 3 to 4 hours in our stomach with our natural bacterial train and acids and the basic fast fermentation going on in our stomach doesn't work. So if you put something that doesn't rot into your stomach, first of all, it's not going to rot. It's not going to digest and break down. Second of all is there's no life force in it, as in it's not alive.
Right.
It won't give you life because there's actually an energy transmission that takes place from the life of the food. And this is one of the things that I've only heard one other person talk about, and she's a massage therapist and wrote a book. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. But that the stomach is actually an energy absorption is part of the job of the stomach, not only to break the digestion or to break the food particles down into more of a processable size, but it also absorbs the life force that's in the food. It explains some of that in that book, Electrical Nutrition. And if you're not eating to increase your vibrancy, your life force, you're only eating supplements, see, there you're missing out on the life force. And if you're only eating for the life force and you're not getting the elements, then you can't create your biology. So it's kind of a catch-22. You got to look at both sides of things, the energy side of things or the life force side, as well as the elemental stuff, making sure it's very nutritionally dense to feed yourself.
That's a great way of looking at it, Will. Thank you for that. The idea of acknowledging food is an energy transfer. It's a lot of spiritual people think of it that way, but I think that's something that we need to start looking at as a mass society. That food is literally energy transfer, and what you're putting in your body needs to have a life force energy to give you life force. I love that. I really love that.
I like to pick on Doritos because my family had trucks also as well as farmed, and one of my jobs growing up was hauling the potatoes and corn to the manufacturing plants. And the amount of processing that went into the corn or the potatoes before it even got into the factory was huge. I mean, it was sprayed with fungicides. It was washed in acids. It was trucked thousands of miles before it even got into the opportunity, before it even got the opportunity to go into the food-making process. That was just the handling of it.
Wow.
And where's the life force and all that? Where's the gratitude and all of that? Everybody that handles your food, this is what I really get about McDonald's or these other fast foods. These people are being paid slave wages to handle your food, who you're supposed to get your life force from. And it's full of toxins and chemicals and genetic modification. It's like it's a lose just out the door on the energy level. There's no gratitude. There's no thankfulness. And most people don't even take the time to, they just scarf it right down. They don't even take the time to be thankful,
Yeah. They're eating it on the highway on the way home from work or whatnot, and, not even acknowledging it, not even conscious of what they're eating.
Exactly.
And, you made a good point. Thank you for that. That was another great point, the idea of these fast food places. And, don't get me wrong, I know there's some very good people out there working at fast food places, but I'm sure that they are not conscious of sending good energy into the food. They just want to make the food and send it out and get it out of the way. People forget that even touching is an exchange of energy. So the idea of people that are, like you said, doing slave wages, they're angry, they're pissed off, they want to get out of there, putting their energy onto the food, and then you're not even being aware of what you're putting into your body, even on a nutritional level, is something that we really need to think about.
I believe that, yes.
Absolutely. And, let me ask you something about this. How, and again, I want to use this first hour of explaining how we got to where we are. And let me ask you about that. When did this start, this whole idea? I don't want to say the whole idea, but when did the culture begin to think it was okay to not care about food? Is it fair to say it was in the 50s, TV dinner boom or something, or how did this slip into our normal way of thinking day to day?
Well, I think my own following timeline, we can trace back to the 1400s into Europe.
Oh.
Literally that far back, and actually we can go back further, but, we don't have to. Because we have a serf mentality that has permeated the bulk of humanity, and then you have those that control the serfs. That's Europe.
Right.
The medieval Europe. And I've done my family lineage on my father's side back to about 1100, and there was a lot of wealthy people in my lineage back then, and there was two distinct different classes of people, and they ate two distinctly different ways. You had the serf class, the workers, the slaves class, whatever you want to call them, the lowly country people, the farmers, that they basically ate like we eat today, gruel and skim milk.
Right.
Using those two as an example, because I don't consider either one of them food. But they used that because they were taxed to death. The ruling class took the cream of the crop. Think about that saying.
Yeah.
The cream of the crop. You sold your cream or you gave your cream as a tax. You got the skim milk, the leftovers. The curds went to the as your tax. You got the whey. The whey was actually a waste product for eons before that medieval period. You never ate whey. But yet today we have whey that's being promoted and touted as some kind of a health food.
Is whey cottage cheese, or is that the curd?
No, that's the curd.
Oh, okay.
The leftovers is the whey. The stuff that they used to throw away, they fed to the pigs. They never ate that stuff. That was for the poor people to eat. Okay, so this is part of this unconscious conspiracy thing, right? Okay, so then you had the higher class or the wealthy. They would get all the good cuts of meat. They would get all the good fresh vegetables, and the leftovers went to everyone. See, this goes back a long ways. This is nothing new, really. It's actually quite sickening to even comprehend and think about how long this has been going on.
Yeah.
And yet today, all these things that have been for eons, only for the slave and serf class, now being touted as something healthy. It makes me just ill to think that people are that detached from history and the reality of our past to be repeating it again and again and again today.
I couldn't agree more, and we've only got less than a minute for this segment, but I just want to point out I'm a big foodie. I love watching cooking shows. I love to cook. I love cuisine, fine cuisine, and whatnot. But it's very funny how some of these shows now I'm noticing, and this goes to show you exactly what Wil Spencer is talking about. I mean, they're promoting recipes for like tripe and, intestines and, all the leftover junk. Oh, isn't it delicious? You're a good cook if you can make intestines and tripe taste good. And that's got to be where all the garbage is, and that is what they fed the peasants. And I know a lot of it comes from, like, French cooking, cuisine and whatnot, but anyway, we're coming up on a break here, so let me not start a new discussion just yet, but when we return, we're going to continue talking to Wil Spencer about this conspiracy against our... And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are here speaking with Wil Spencer about the conspiracy against our health. We've covered a lot over this last hour, and I'm hoping to talk a little bit more about solutions. But before we do that, Wil, I wanted to ask you, there's been a lot of hype, or how shall we say, commercialization of fiber. And I know you talk about this in your new book, and I was wondering if you could, A, tell us why is fiber so important, and B, what's good fiber versus bad fiber?
Fiber is really important if it's in the insoluble state. Soluble fiber, which means, insoluble fiber means non-digestible. Soluble fiber means digestible. And there is a website that I would encourage everyone to look at. Don't take my word for this. It's called fibermenace.com. This guy wrote a book. It's called Fiber Menace. It's a little kind of a dry read. Everything's pretty much on the website. And it's got videos and interactive stuff. And he talks about, this was somebody from Central Europe who was a pharmacist that was losing his sight and got diabetes and all kinds of stuff. And in his search for fixing his own health challenges, discovered that insoluble fiber was at the root of his problems. That is, there's a couple of main categories. I lump them into my chapter 2 of my book, and I titled it Grains, Nuts, Seeds, and Tubers. That's your peanuts and your potatoes and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's where your bulk of your insoluble fiber can be found, and they don't rot very well. They don't break down. They actually end up feeding the pathogens in our body, like the funguses, the candidas, and the penicilliums, and all the other different funguses just love the insoluble fiber. It causes so many digestive...
A moment as we were looking for you, I wanted to ask you, what happens... A lot of people ask me, like, what do we do with the stuff that's left over in our juicer when we raw juice? Is that insoluble fiber, or is that soluble fiber?
Mostly it's insoluble fiber.
Oh, okay.
If it doesn't break down, if it takes a long time to compost out in your compost pile, that's... For instance, this is an old example. They've taken grain out of mummies' tombs that have been thousands of years old, recorded history, and they've sprouted them. Okay, so if it's laying there for thousands of years and it does not break down or rot, do you think we should be eating it in that state?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Unless there's a famine, you see. If you look at the mechanism of agriculture that we live in, a lot of what we're being told with this insoluble fiber, as I'll hold that up as the focal point, that the bulk of our fiber, the insoluble fiber, never used to be in the food chain until the mechanization of the food chain, the industrialization of the food chain, where they can actually take, and this is a farming principle today, you can have a 700 horsepower tractor, and you can plow, disc, and plant 100 acres a day. You tell me in history where they could raise that kind of mass quantities when you have only a horse and sticks and a little bit of metal at your disposal.
Right.
Totally impossible. And this ties in really so well. I had a client and a really good friend. We got to be friends. His name was Dr. Michael Steffi. He was a professor of anthropology for 42 years. He was a professor at Queen's University. And he left me with a statement before he left this earth. His statement was, science of today is merely nothing but an advanced marketing tool for industry.
Wow.
We have 30, 40 years of junk science that is being touted as something that is good for us, when in fact they're doing nothing but conning us into being a serf like 1,400 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people today go around saying all this, they're just vomiting out and repeating all these other, the scientific stuff that isn't even applicable today. It has nothing to do with biological truth, fact, and health, other than marketing you a product in disguise of health.
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, I noticed that these hot items or hot ingredients or whatnot that science likes to tout, and then, of course, industry commercializes on, several years later, they reverse their study and say, oh, no, that's not good for you.
Like eggs. First they're bad, then they're good, then they're bad, then they're good.
Right.
I wish they'd make up their mind. Another one that's today that I'm really hoping it's going to go down this egg path of reversal is coconut oil. I am seeing more people that are becoming ill by taking coconut oil, that if you just do the history, back in the 80s, they started planting thousands and thousands of acres, clear-cutting the forests in Central and South America to plant these selectively bred and GMO coconut trees. And now they've got the industrial processes down where they can mechanize the harvesting, the processing, the distribution, the shipping of coconut oil. And today I get so many clients that tell me they're eating this stuff, they're using it on their bodies, and I'm saying, could you just do me a favor? You have this list of symptoms and these illnesses going on. Can you just, 1 week, stop doing this and let's see if it's really helping you or not? In almost every single case, they stop for less than 7 days, and they already started noticing an improvement in their health.
Wow.
That's huge fraud in my book. That's just one industry. That's just the coconut industry.
Right, exactly. God, you're giving me a flashback to growing up in South Florida, and I don't know if how this ties into the conspiracy aspect, but I feel it does, is when I grew up, you could see nothing, in the horizon you saw nothing but these tall, beautiful coconut trees in everyone's yard, all over the place. Now you go down there are no coconut trees. As a matter of fact, I believe now it's like illegal to grow coconut because of some disease, or palm disease or something. The same thing with citrus. You used to be able to pick citrus in your backyard. You can't grow citrus trees down there anymore. It's illegal. And, of course, industry took it over, just like you said. The coconut industry, the orange industry, the citrus industry, and they're all genetically modified now. And it's a real shame that,
they've actually created the diseases, these we'll call them GMO pathogens.
Yep. And
they actually were this particular diseases, like in the coconuts, that actually caused them to start dying. They were all over. I was down there when I was younger. I was in California, Southern California, as a little child. My parents took us to the beach, and it's similar things. And they've actually the industrial world has manufactured diseases to eradicate naturally occurring wild trees like that, and then ban them, legislated, mandated, banning them, and now we have them 20 years later as a food item, as something that you can only get them through the store.
Yeah. They've industrialized it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
That's really sad. Really sad. Let's move on a little bit. In your book, you talk about lactose intolerance, and that seems to be a really big hot-button issue nowadays. Everyone's lactose intolerant. Can you tell us a little bit what you were talking about in your book and why this sudden intolerance?
Well, again, I believe it's a manufactured event. It's a byproduct of the industrialization going on and the junk science, if you will.
Yeah.
And I say this particular topic is kind of very dear to me because it does affect a lot of people. And you have to understand how the body works in the digestive system really to get this concept. Lactase is an enzyme that our body naturally creates in the upper small intestine to help break down the amino acids or the cream or the milk sugars that are in the milk. We're mammals. We're designed to drink milk at birth. That was my problem. I was born lactose intolerant. My mom was so full of fungus, her milk was actually very toxic to me and caused me great harm as a child, as an infant.
Right.
Okay, and this is going on today. 40-plus years later, it's the same thing going on, but worse, on a larger scale. It is the problem of our body not being able to create the lactase, which is the enzyme needed to break down lactose, which is milk sugar. And unfortunately, when we don't create lactase, there's a whole other door that opens up to ill health, and the lactose intolerance is only just one step inside that door. We have figured out, we figured out working with people what causes that, and this is, I'm pretty sure if I was watching you, your jaw is going to drop. Okay, the ingestion, the eating of dry ground grains, nuts, seeds, or tubers, or eating those components in any fashion, the way we do today, actually disables our body's ability to create the lactase. So by following the recommended USDA diet, whether that be conventional or organic, doesn't matter, it's a high in soluble fiber diet, just eating those food-like substances causes lactose intolerance, to name one of a barrage, a list of things. Lactose intolerance is only one.
Wow.
So we're actually following directions by our healthcare providers to then cause us harm, so we can't even eat things that are beneficial to us, like milk as a baby.
Now, let me ask you, Will, what do you think of pasteurization? Does that have anything to do with all of this, the removing of the natural funguses or enzymes?
Well, see, that's a pretty big window to be talking from, because there's several things going on. We have milk today, and the processes of shipping, storage, and consumption today, and then we have back in the 1800s when Pasteur actually stole the information from Belchamp and plagiarized it and twisted it to what we have today known as the germ theory. So Yeah, this is a great topic. I love this topic. This germ theory. Okay, pasteurization came about because they did not have refrigeration back then. So then the milk would be sitting out, and it would be having the natural bacteria and funguses that were just part of nature, because it's like a petri dish in this warm milk. And so then it would grow, and then people would drink that, and then they would have these foodborne illnesses. They'd have diarrhea, and they'd have all these other illnesses associated with these pathogenic properties of these microorganisms, because you're consuming live organisms in the milk. By nature, they're just in there. That's why milk was such a medicine, because it's full of probiotics, if you want to look at it from that standpoint.
Right.
It's only because there was no refrigeration and the milk stood out on the doorstep when they used to deliver milk in the wagons, and they didn't have very well cleaning standards and stuff. They didn't have these problems because people everyone had a cow or something, or they had fast access to it, so they were drinking it fresh and raw all the time. So this guy who basically stole this information, twisted it, and now the germ or the bacteria or the probiotic in a pathogenic state is now the enemy. We can kill it by cooking it. So now we have 100+ years later of this germ theory, scared of the germ. And when you really look at it, the germ is another word for pathogen that's gone out of balance. It's also another word for probiotic or microorganism. It's all the same. We need them in a balanced state in our bodies as to keep us healthy. So when you pasteurize or you cook the milk, you actually cause the lactose, the milk sugars, to caramelize and to stick together. So you're cooking the sugar. So let's picture candy making. Everybody's pretty much made candy before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When they're kids. Okay, like taffy or whatever. You're actually causing that caramelization to take place. So instead of a little bitty molecule of the lactose, you're causing them to stick together, to clump together, and now you have this big gooey gum molecule. And to break that down is extremely difficult for the human digestive system. And on top of that, you throw the inability for the body to create lactase on top of that, and now we have lactose intolerance big time. Because a lot of times, people that are lactose intolerant to pasteurized milk, if you give them raw milk, they don't have a problem for the most part.
Right.
Well, a lot of times that's the case. It's in that cooking of the milk causing that caramelization of the sugars in the milk that's the damage that takes place that causes a lot of the lactose intolerance.
And I'm assuming that it would overlap into cheeses and whatnot as well. We have Americans haven't even tasted real cheese in 50 years or 100 years.
Right. Yeah, it does. See, people can a lot of times eat the cheeses that are pasteurized better than they can tolerate pasteurized milk because, well, what is making cheese? You're putting an enzyme into the milk, some kind of catalyst, to cause the sugars or the amino acids, the cream, to clump together, and then it gets aged. A lot of the real good cheeses get aged with another bacteria, so it's kind of pre-digested. So a lot of people that can't handle pasteurized milk can actually do much better on cheeses, and raw cheeses, to be a little bit more specific, are way better for us, easier to digest than the pasteurized cheeses. But for sure, cheese is a lot of times easier. And if you're reactive to both, we know then you have a pretty serious GI tract issue. And that's where supplementation of lactase is paramount amongst, that's in with our protocols when we help people heal.
Right. And just to compound the situation, I mean, I myself, I found myself to become a bit lactose intolerant over the last 10 years. And now I've got to spend, $60 a month to buy probiotics, which I'm assuming was already in the raw milk in the first place.
Well, yeah, see there again, we have to kind of draw lines again, because where are you getting your milk from? Is it a grain-based dairy operation, or is it a grass-based dairy operation? Are they conscientious about what they're feeding the milk? Are they using antibiotics in the cattle? You see, there's a lot of variables that come into play here when we're talking about things. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So what used to be really easy topics to talk about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, today, we have to actually have a half a conversation just about definitions about what you're talking about.
Right. Well, for me, let's just say I've been buying. I buy the supermarket brand, the Kroger brand of milk, which I'm sure is probably the worst one. But even though they said they don't put hormones in their stuff.
Well, it's if it's a whole milk, it's whole milk. So here again, this is where we get into politics again, because we have labeling laws that come into play. I mean, normal milk has way more than 20% butterfat in it. When you talk raw milk in the store, legally, it has to have a minimum of 7% butterfat to be labeled whole milk. Okay,
right.
7, looking at 7 and then looking at 20 plus is a big variable there. So, what kind of milk are you looking at? Me, I say get to know a farmer.
Yeah.
And every state, if you go on my website, bodyelectrician.com, and you go to the resource tab, there are 2 links at the top of my resource tab that will tell you where to find real raw milk in every state of the Union and Canada. They're there. I don't care if it's legal or not to sell. People are becoming extremely creative because they know raw milk is actually a medicinal if you raise it in a certain fashion.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends here in Virginia. In Virginia, it's illegal to sell raw milk, but they've circumvented the law by renting a cow. So basically, 20 people will rent this one cow, and they go to the farm and they get the milk from the cow way raw.
Yep, exactly. I know a lot of farmers that are doing that all over the place, and I encourage people to get to know your farmer. I sold raw milk for 8 years. I had an organic goat dairy, and I sold directly to the consumer off my farm for 8 years. And that, you want to talk about a life experience, is being a farmer that is conscientious about what they're selling. And you've just changed your life because now you've taken out and stopped feeding the industrial mediating sector of marketing. You've just now contributed to the overall more of a unity of society. You've taken out the parasites in the food chain just by going directly to who's raising your food.
And I feel that's that's probably the best way for all of us at this point. It's very hard, like you said, to circumvent the grocery store. It'd be great to get to know a farmer and to work with them. I will say, unfortunately, economically speaking, it usually costs a bit more money. Myself, I am a meat eater. I was raised in South Florida in a Cuban family. I like my pork roast. I like my churrasco steak. And I've looked for the meats, and it's literally double, if not triple, for a grass-fed, non-hormone meat per pound.
Well, it is a little bit more money. But I'm going to tell you, if you choose to eat that way directly from the consumer, from a conscientious farmer, as a consumer, you will notice that your volume, just the sheer volume of food, will drop considerably because they're actually putting more inputs into the soil on most cases. Now, this is a kind of a general statement, but most people that are conscientious about their animals and their food, their garden, their crops that they're selling are more conscientious about the nutritional density in the plant. If not, you get to know your farmer. It's still better than Walmart. And then you start having conversations with that farmer to say, you know what, I really enjoy buying stuff from you. Would you consider adding a little bit more supplements to your soil or to your feed rations for your animals, so then your animals will become more nutritionally dense, and then your food then will be more nutritionally valuable. And every single farmer that I've ever done, and I've lived in a lot of different places around this country, every single farmer that I've done that to has said, absolutely, I would love to do that if it's going to help my animals become healthier and help my customers to become healthier and happier. They all do it because they care.
And they really do. They really do. Now, unfortunately now, on the dark side of this particular topic, especially when it comes to farmers, not to get too political here, but we're having big issues now with farmers that are being shut down from either through a Monsanto lawsuit or federal guidelines or refusing government subsidies. It really has become heroic to a point now for a farmer to do things the way that you're explaining right now, to be more organic, what is it, where they exchange the fields, you plant, I forgot what it's called, where they
biodynamics is the term for your.
Right, where they're planting different crops throughout the different seasons and whatnot, not sucking up the nutrients from the soil. It really is. It's very heroic at this time, and unfortunately, I mean, we here I am in Roanoke, just 20 miles out or 5 miles out. There are nothing but farms around me, and I'm hearing of people getting lawsuits or their crops are being cross-pollinated with Monsanto pollen and whatnot, and they're having a hard time just keeping out the GMO.
Well, here is where raising conscientious food comes into the political aspect of things, because if your farm is structured as a corporation, an LLC, like a lot of farms are, because that was the trend in the 70s, and it's just continued, then there's a jurisdiction issue, and the government then can step in and do these things. This is where being proactive, this is where putting your farm, like a trust or a foundation, a non-statutory structure, is paramount to get to save you and your farm the liabilities of the fraud and the outright terrorism being pushed through.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Just before the break, Wil Spencer was talking and telling us a little bit about how to circumvent the, and I like the term you used, Wil, the terroristic approach, the terrorism of government over these farms. And I was wondering if you could repeat that again, because I think that's a really important topic for those of us out there that perhaps might be considering a farm, the difference between an LLC and, what did you say, perhaps like a foundation or something?
Yeah, there's a structure that has virtually disappeared that has been around for thousands of years, literally. It's called a Pure Contract Trust Foundation. This is how J. Paul Getty, at one time, was like the richest man of the world, right? He owned nothing, but he managed or was a trustee in these trust foundations that are basically, they're exempt from government, from IRS, they're a non-taxable entity, and they operate in a realm of contract between a trustor and a trustee. And the corporations, I mean, I also have corporation too, because we interface a little bit that way,
right,
in some of our business dealings, because all the banking now, they've done away with that particular aspect of banking, that you have to be some kind of corporate entity of some kind. This goes into the global domination of the banksters.
Yeah.
Okay? They want everybody to be included into this. And this goes into agriculture. And if you are operating with an LLC or any other kind of corporate structure, you then become under the jurisdiction of the corporation. which the United States government is a corporation, and all of its 400 and some different subsidiaries,
Right.
whether it's the FDA, the AMA, the EPA, those are all corporations. Okay, so then they have the jurisdiction to go and harass and terrorize those that are part of the system whenever they deem fit. And these farms are LLCs for the most part, or they're operating in their individual capacity, which if you have the Social Security number, this is where it goes into a really deep rabbit hole.
Right.
And just to stay on the surface, okay, if you are under the jurisdiction of the corporation in any fashion, they have every right, and all of their laws and statutes say that they can do what they do. So in order not to play the game, you have to stop playing the game. That means you have to come into another structure that they don't have jurisdiction over. Except now we go into these trust foundations, and see, here's where today is a slippery slope. We are seeing the militarization of the police force and the FDA and the AMA and the USDA coming in with their USDA SWAT teams.
Yep.
And stealing your food products that you sell to your consumers. Okay?
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of that in the last several years, especially.
Unfortunately, this is what we live. This is what we have to deal with. So you have to do what you can do to get away from that, because the system, the corporation, is an inhumane, unhuman entity in and of itself, and you are treated like that. This is why the inhumane treatment of people and animals is so prevalent, because there is no humanity in corporations. It is all numbers and letters, dashes and zeros. That's it.
Yeah.
And we've been sold a bill of goods, a lie, that that's the way we need to operate in order to operate. Well, I'm sorry, but it's not working for me. I'm sorry, but I am a human being. I have beats in my heart and blood in my veins, and I am not a corporation. And when you can distinguish the difference and gain your humanity back and stand up for who you are and what you are, this is what we have to do in mass, just like they're doing in other parts of the world that this country basically doesn't know how to do, and we're not even being shown on a mass scale what the rest of the world is doing in mass, standing up for themselves and their humanity.
It's a sad state of affairs, at least in the United States. In reference to what you were saying, like you said, we're seeing this happening all over the world. And, to bring it back to what we're talking about here, food and whatnot, I mean, I've seen, like you said, SWAT teams come in and destroy farms and take their goods, their milk, their cheeses, their meats, their vegetables, over some, like you said, a corporate regulation or whatnot. And that's no way for us to live, especially if we are going to hopefully get to a place of nutritional health and vitality, and especially with these farmers that are trying to do the right thing, and now they're being, like we just said, they're being attacked literally by SWAT teams from the USDA and whatnot. It's a really sad state of affairs. For those of you that aren't aware of this, you can Google it. You can go on YouTube. You can see these SWAT teams. I think, what was it, about a year ago, they took over an Amish farm, for goodness sake. A SWAT team came in and just busted all the milk and whatnot. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, we've got about 15 minutes left in the segment, and I know that you've dedicated a lot of information in your book to Candida. And a lot of people, we've heard the term, we hear about it, and what is Candida, and why is it such a problem now?
Candida is a family of microorganism fungi, and this began like a decade ago because it was beginning to become popular. They were able to identify that particular family of fungus because it's a larger one. It's easier to see under the microscope, and it has a huge list of symptoms when you have an overgrowth of this in your body. And I just realized, looking at the list of symptoms associated with the candida overgrowth, that that's my problem. I had all these things going on. The majority of my ill health was because of this candida stuff. So that led me, down a lot of different paths to figure out what in the world, why is it even there? Well, to discover that, it's actually a pretty crucial part of our digestive terrain. Its responsibility is to digest the insoluble fiber, or attempt to digest the insoluble fiber that passes through our GI tract just naturally. But you see, the problem is our environment is so out of balance, and the nature's response is the microorganisms, the fungi especially, and candida kind of leads the pack, and it is there because it is out of balance. And because of the pesticides and the chemicals and the malnutrition state, that basically we're a bunch of ill health, unhealthy, ill humans. Which, if you liken it into agriculture, the pests and the weeds are only in a crop or in the field because the field itself is unhealthy. So you liken that to us. We're out of balance, and we're very ill across the spectrum on a large scale. And the candida is only there in response to the out of balance state. It's trying to recycle the out of balance state to bring back some balance. So it therefore then is allowed to overgrow and starts to break down our bodies, literally, because our bodies are just that imbalanced and unhealthy. So it's a natural state going on. It's a natural event going on in response to this industrialized, out of balance environment that we live in. And when you bring balance back to your body and you feed yourself in a much better, more nutritionally dense way, and you put the probiotics back in there, and you get the gut to start working right, and the enzymes and the digestion, you eat things that are not feeding them, like the insoluble fiber, your body responds by being able to bring back the balance. And then candida then, and all its 14 different strains in its family, are not allowed to go pathogenic or overgrow and cause problems. And that's the bulk of my book, is actually about this fungus, this mysterious thing, this organism that people want to fight against and to try to kill, when just trying to kill it doesn't really help. Actually trying to kill it by using standard naturopathic ways as well as standard allopathic ways only leads to its continued growth and its growth and multiplication of itself, because it's the out of balance and unhealthy environment it lives in that actually is allowing it to even be there.
Right. And if I can take this a bit further, is that we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have all the bacteria in our bodies already. We have all the diseases, the cancers, and all that. It's just a matter of our bodies being in balance, like you said. It's when it comes out of balance that so much illness begins to perpetuate within our system, whether it be energetically or physically or mentally. It's a matter of staying in a state of balance and vitality. Is that kind of a great way to get into an optimal health state?
Absolutely. You said that perfectly. And if you look at just the definition of what homeostasis is a balance, is our body trying to balance what it has. And our bodies are not doing a very good job of this balancing or reaching homeostasis because it's in a deficient state, mineral and amino acid deficient state. It's in a very toxic state, and there's pathogens galore just there because of the imbalances. And so that's what that we've really got really clear and really good at, is helping you, the client, if you come to us, to really get your body into that balanced state, and all these things just fall away. the pathogenic states just disappear. The diabetes disappears. The body is a fantastic healing machine if you give it what it's missing, and if you know what it's missing, and the body just does the work. The body does the healing. We don't do really anything. We just suggest some things, and the body really does all the work. Seriously.
Right. We have a question here, and I'm wondering if it kind of goes with what we're talking about already. Sinsu is asking what type of food and vitamin regimen improves and enhances mood.
It improves and enhances what, Bernard?
What food and vitamin regimen will improve and enhance your mood?
Oh, your mood. Okay, so that's a hormonal issue. Okay, and here's a whole, there's a window again. We're going to open just a little bit.
There we go.
Okay, for our body to create a balanced set of hormones requires amino acids and minerals in a lot of them. So we live in a mineral and amino acid deficient state. Therefore, our body can't even create balanced hormones because we're already in a deficient state. So there's a short answer for that. A little additive is I don't encourage any vitamins at all. We actually know, and science has been saying this for decades, that our body makes its own vitamins when it's in a balanced state. It's actually the probiotics or the microorganisms in their balanced state that make the vitamins for us in our GI tract and in our body. So our goal is to get your body to start functioning the way it's supposed to create its own vitamins, and then we look at what's deficient, and we have technology to tell us what's deficient and then what to do about it. You can read that on my website also. And then you follow the protocol that's created, and you just get well. There's the short answer.
And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know that when I'm feeling healthy, I'm feeling happy.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what it comes down to. And it goes back to what we were saying, that if we are in homeostasis, if we are in a state of balance, our brain function will be balanced, our hormones will be balanced, and our mood will be balanced. We talk a lot, when I say we, I mean the general public. The general public talks a lot about mental imbalances like depression or manic depression and all whatnot, and it always comes down to the chemical factor. Manic depression is a lack of saline, if I'm not mistaken, salts in the brain. Same thing with depression. It's the neurotransmitters aren't functioning correctly due to a lack of certain minerals or vitamins. So I would think, kind of like what you said, it really is all about maintaining balance. Now, as far as we've only got a few more minutes, but I think this is a really good topic because of the fact so many people are in depression. Does your answer apply for people in depression as well?
Yes, we deal with that. That's like rampant right now, epidemic.
Yeah, everyone's in depression,
Yeah.
Or either that or they just want the pills because they see it on TV. I don't know.
Well, we don't operate that way. We help people, but we kind of have our own way. We do not do, we're not just pushing pills. We actually are looking at your subconscious mind. We're looking at your hormone regulation. We're looking at actually some mental, emotional, negative programming when this comes. See, there's a lot of things. When you start talking hormone regulation and balance, this is a big, big door that, I don't want to even open right now because that's a whole show.
Yeah, it is. Well, with that being said, what is the best way, right now, everybody who's listening, kind of like a generic way of taking the first step, what would that be that you would offer everybody? What's the first step that would work for everybody to start living in a more vital and balanced way of health?
Consider just a few things. There's only 5 rules, really, and a couple of them really simply are. Consider grains, nuts, seeds, and tubers. They're not even food, first of all, right off the top.
Okay.
Consider that it's not even food. And try it for a week or two, and then you tell me if I'm wrong, the difference your body shifts, okay? And then there's some food combining rules. Okay, you never mix fruits and vegetables together. Like if you go to Applebee's and have their cranberry salad, shame on you. you're giving a distinct fruit like cranberries, mixing them with a green, which is salad, and you're actually causing a dysbacteriosis state, and actually you're causing a gut ache, is what you're doing. Because the two gastric juices cancel each other out, and so this is where some food combining comes into play. You never do that.
So don't get the apple and kale juice at the juicing place?
No, please do not do that. Exactly. You never mix those things like that. Okay? Now, in theory, it's good, okay, but it's just all part of this junk science. In biological truth, though, it doesn't. Our bodies don't operate that way. Okay? Just a couple of things. There's two things that will change your life just by implying them.
Right on. And, I can't help but wonder. It's funny because I've had a weird way of eating the last month or so. And, well, I shouldn't say last week or so since the holidays are over. My body only wants to eat one thing at a time. I don't feel like having a chicken breast and a salad. I don't feel like having meat and potato. I want one thing or the other. And it's kind of like my body's telling me, okay, you just need this right now. Just have that piece of chicken. Or, maybe a couple hours later, just have that little bit of cheese or something. I'm wondering, is that a healthier way of eating than combining everything, since we're talking about combinations?
I think it's a much better way of eating, and eating like that, isolated like that. It gives your stomach to just concentrate on one thing. It uses it, it does its job, and then you can put some. This is where the more wealthy people in times past had courses in their meals, and meals took 3 and 4 hours, like all afternoon.
Yep.
And just think about that. Treat yourself like royalty. You're just doing it unconsciously, Bernard, right?
Yeah, it was just unconsciously, exactly.
So that's great. Your body knows. It's just people need to be more in touch with that part of us.
So this whole idea of having 7 courses in one sitting is not good unless you're literally spacing out the course.
I agree with that. That's why I don't really agree with juicing so much, these superfood type juices. Just because you're putting it into a blender and spinning it all up does not equate to something nutritious by my definition.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. What about raw eating? How would you? I don't know if you do it, but or what you know about it. But what's your concept and feelings on having a completely raw diet? And what are some downfalls?
I'm a raw person. I totally subscribe to raw food.
Okay.
Except I'm a raw paleo. I'm more, because see here again, if it's raw and you're eating more of a paleo diet, it rots really fast. And there's more life force in that raw paleo type of thinking, or that focus, than there is more towards the vegetarian. If you just look at it, just use that rock to rot theory we talked about earlier. If it doesn't rot on your cupboard in 7 days, or start to rot, it's not going to feed you.
Are there any combinations in a raw diet that we should be aware of that we shouldn't do?
It's just that simply combining. You never want to mix animal protein and any starch together. So that kind of throws out the whole hamburger thing.
Right.
It throws out the whole, meat and potatoes kind of thing. Because it's an American diet.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet, and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.